Welcome to the Nickels and Dimes Finding Financial Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and I look forward each and every week to bringing you amazing content that will provide you with a financial education, will support you on your financial journey, and most importantly, help you to find financial freedom. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to the Nickels and Dimes Finding Financial Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and today I'm excited to be talking to Cyndi Hall and Jenna Reid, who are two amazing business partners of mine that I've gotten to know over the last year or so. Both happen to transition out of the nursing field into financial services. Over the last few years, they've been building their businesses, but they've made that full transition to financial services now. And I just think when I look at, post-COVID, I see so many nurses making shifts, and I see what you guys are doing, and you're building teams of other nurses who want to change in their lives. And I just felt like it's really a conversation for you, the listeners, to hear about why there's such a shift in that area, why financial services, from two women who are walking in those shoes. So I'm super excited to have them here today. I'm going to touch just a little bit on these two amazing ladies, and then I'll have them tell you a little bit more about themselves as well. But Cyndi Hall is a mom, a wife, a grandmother, one of the most energetic, joy-filled people that I've ever met. She's always excited, and I'm sure she has her moments, but I've never seen her anything but happy and excited about, life, the opportunity to do what she does. And I get to see her making an impact on people's lives every single day. Jenna is also a wife and a mother. She is also one of the happiest people I know, but she has this calming spirit about her at the same time. So I'm super grateful to know both of them. I will tell you, Jenna's little girl, she's 3 or 4 now. She's 4. She is the cutest stinking thing. And I love the little videos that Jenna posts about her. She has so much spunk. It just cracks me up. But I'm really excited to have these two ladies join me today to just talk about, in general, that transition from maybe who you've always been or what you always saw yourself doing into stepping into a different realm and what that looks like in that conversion. For them, specifically nursing, but for so many of the listeners, they come from all different places. And I just think hearing those messages about transition in life and finding something else that gives you purpose is a really important message in today's world. So thank you guys both for being here. I want to start with my icebreaker question. So I'm going to throw this out here. I'm going to let Cyndi answer first and then Jenna. So my icebreaker question is, if you could be any superhero, who would you be and why?
Hands down, Wonder Woman.
There we go.
100%, right? One, she's got great hair and she can spin around in a circle and then kick everybody's ass. There you go.
There you go. I love it. I feel like you could do that too, for sure. All right, Jenna, how about you?
I'm going to have to go with Catwoman. I like to lurk in the night. I'm a night owl myself, and I don't like to get ready. So, having that thing all over my head, I wear stroke caps for my nursing job. So, hey, I don't have to get ready, and I can lurk through the night and, sneak around and in a little tight outfit. I don't know. It's kind of fun. My spunky side comes out of me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I say every single week that I can actually visualize the answers that I get from people, because they just, they fit with who you are. Cyndi, I absolutely see you as, this whirlwind of activity of just getting things done that need to get done. And Jenna, I can see you kind of sneaking around, making things happen and making people wonder what's going on. So that little bit of mystery there around Catwoman, I can definitely see it for sure. So I want to have you guys, and this time I'll start with Jenna, just take a couple minutes and share a little bit about, who you are and your story with the audience before we dig into the details.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having us on. I feel honored and privileged to be here today. But yeah, I've been in nursing for 11 years. I did do 5 years of management in an ambulatory outpatient surgery center for multi-specialty surgery center. So I've done both, just being a nurse, clocking in, clocking out. And I've also, done the management realm as well and led a team in that aspect. And nursing is something that I always wanted to do. So my family, my mom's been a nurse for over 40 years. I have surgeons in my family. I have nurse practitioners in my family. And I really never thought I would do anything else. I actually wanted to be a surgeon when I went to school. And then I was like, I don't want to go to school this long. And so I was like, I'll just be a nurse. Needless to say, me saying I'll just be a nurse, I never knew the detailed and entailment of what nursing really meant, because I feel like as a nurse, we are everything. We are their family, their confidant, their advocate. A lot of times we're there much more than anybody else, especially in the hospital realm. And so it means so much more to me than I'm just a nurse. So that's a little bit just of my background. I still love nursing. It is something that'll always be very passionate for me. I built a lot of compassion in this industry, and I want to help others. That's why I got into the industry myself. Of course, besides only wanting to do healthcare. But yeah, that's kind of my background.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Cyndi?
So, as Natalie said, I am a mom, wife, grandmother to 4 grandkids. But I also want to thank Natalie for inviting us on. I'm super grateful to be part of this, and anything we can do to help get the word out about what people are doing, how you can have choices, because I felt for the longest time I didn't have any choices. I became a nurse at a very young age. I graduated at the age of 20. I went straight from my high school to nursing school. Um, and I don't, I know why I became a nurse, but I don't know if I wanted to do that my whole life. I took care of my great grandfather at home, and I always thought I couldn't be a nurse because I never really loved kind of the things I thought was like, ew, I didn't like shots. I didn't like to go to the doctor or anything. But we ended up having to do like this big care at home with him. And my mom just like yelled from the other room. I went in, we took care of it. And I was like, oh, well, I could do that. I could probably do anything, It was kind of gross. I didn't really think about it in the time. In the moment, we just took care of it. Right. And so I went to nursing school. I think back then, I've been a nurse over 40 years. You were just groomed into certain professions, regardless of what you wanted to do. And so I think that was why I went that direction. My mom wanted to be a nurse, but she never did because she was a mom at 16. I wasn't super great at school until I became an adult. And so I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I couldn't get into any schools. So I just went the route that they would take me. Literally, that's the route I went. And so I spent a lot of years in nursing. I did critical care, ER, infusions. I've loved my patients. I've seen all kinds of things, different walks of life, had to tell people horrific things and great things. And I was in management for a hot second. I did not love it. I thought it was the worst job on the planet. But I feel like there was a point in my career that when I made the switch that I was unenamored with healthcare anymore. And we might get into the story a little bit more, but our middle son had a medical event, and I was in our own ER that I worked in, and they basically treated us really poorly. And I thought, wow, if you're treating us, who I'm supposed to be family in this ER, I worked there for almost 20 years, and you're treating us that way. How do you treat other people? Like, I always thought we treated people good, but then I saw the
Yeah.
other side when I never had before, right? And
Yeah.
so I didn't realize it at the time, but was introduced to the financial industry. And then once I got going, I was like, oh, I want to leave this. I really want to leave it. Like, and so I just became like unenamored or disenfranchised. I always thought it was like a great profession, but our medical system is broken, and I don't know that anybody's trying to fix it right now, but that's one of my goals. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I love that you touched on a couple of points there because I think, for me in corporate America, it was the same thing. I loved what I did. I was really good at what I did. And the last several of the companies that I spent time at throughout my career were amazing companies with amazing people, including the last one I was at. Um, it was less about, for me, about what was broken where I was at. Definitely a very different industry than y'all were in, but more about what I wanted to get back for myself that I couldn't get from corporate America, which was, my time and the flexibility. I was an empty nester now. So I was in a huge shift of life, and just looking for that opportunity to do things my way on my time. And so, but I do think there comes a time for so many people out there. And that's why I like to tell these stories, is because, we're talking about you guys coming from the nursing industry this week on this episode. But in reality, like so many of us, whatever industry you are, whatever background you have, there may come a time that you're looking for that switch or that change. And so that's kind of what I want to talk about in this conversation today is, what inspired you to make the shift, and then some of the things that you faced along the way in that transition, because no matter where somebody's coming from, we're going to face those challenges. I certainly did as well. But I just know in your industry, it seems really there's it it's been a lot more visible, I guess is the right way to say that, the last couple of years coming out of COVID, and the weight that y'all had to carry in the medical profession. So first of all, thank you guys for the work you did, because I do think that, Jenna said she wanted to be a surgeon. She ended up being a nurse, but then she realized a nurse was the one, right? Like, you're the one that's getting it done, making things happen, making sure that the doctors stay on track, that everybody stays on track. And so, I'm grateful for the work that you guys do. I was never under either one of your care, but when I go to the doctor and stuff, I'm seeing the nurse way more than I'm seeing the doctor, and he gets paid a whole lot more than the nurses do. And so I know that that's like a lot of other careers, or industries. That's oftentimes what we see. So let's kind of jump into, I know, Cyndi, you already talked a little bit about how you started becoming, unenamored with being a nurse. So let's jump to Jenna for a second. When was it that you kind of started thinking about making that shift from nursing?
So my son at the time was about 10. I've been in this industry now for about 3 years. And he was probably younger than that. Needless to say, I don't remember exactly what age he was. But at the time when COVID hit, I was pregnant with my youngest, who is now 4, Rylan. And she was born in May of 2020. And I was wanting to be home with her. So in order for my husband and I to have Rylan, we went through 2 ectopic pregnancies, went through 2 surgeries, went through IVF. And so I went through a lot, basically, to have this little miracle, my little spunky, endless energy child that I have.
Yeah.
And she was, and obviously a blessing, but at the same time, I was like in management. I never took off any time the entire time that I went through, even the surgeries, the ectopic pregnancies. I think I took off, like I went into surgery on a Friday and I went back to work on Monday. And, I just, abdominal surgery, it's still a pretty significant surgery, but still went back to work. I didn't want to miss any of my time. Didn't want to give up any of my PTO, because the ultimate goal was that I wanted to make sure that I had enough time to be able to take the time off when I had had a baby. And during that time that I had my child, we were all furloughed, and I was at an outpatient center. It's a little different than the hospitals. So when we were furloughed, my particular outpatient center, we were physician owned, we weren't allowed to utilize any of our PTO. So
Wow.
during this time, I just gave up all my, PTO, my extended sick leave, everything. And thank goodness I was at least a saver, but I've always been a good saver, because I had no income coming in. And at this time, I supported our family a lot with the income that I was currently making, that I thought I was going to have. And so being in management, I was like, wow, well, this is really not nice. Like, oh my goodness. Like, I've literally taken care of this company for the last 5 years. I've dedicated my life to this company, and they're not even helping me in this instance. And so it put a bad taste in my mouth. I went back to work at right at that 3 month mark, still breastfeeding. And people know, like, if you're in the medical field, or if you've obviously been through COVID yourself, it was rough. It was rough. We had a lot of people, a lot of nurses be calling out. People were sick. And, I wasn't getting the sleep. I wasn't getting the time. And I finally was like telling my husband, I said, I am not doing this. I want to be able to be home. This is my last kid. I'm never having any more kids. I want to be home. I want to be there. I was missing my son's, sporting events. I was never home. And so I started actually researching multiple companies, like different. I looked at the mortgage industry. I looked at the financial industry. And it wasn't until Jason Beauvais, who I've actually known for over 25 years, he had like made a post on social media, something so simple. And it was in the realm of like him reaching a income level of like 300,000. And I was like, whoa, I grew up with this kid. I've known him since I was 14 years. Like this kid, I'm like, no way. Like, he making 300,000. Like, I don't even make a third of that. And I'm like working my butt off as a nurse manager. And so I was like, okay, what are you doing? Is this some kind of like MLM? And he's like, no, it's in financial services. And I'm like, I know nothing about financial services, but sounds like maybe I should learn a few things. I'm a good saver. I have a 401k. Like, sounds interesting. Let's check it out. And he did an appointment with my husband and myself, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, like this is basic financial concepts that everyone should know, that I felt pretty educated. I mean, I had my bachelor's. I thought that, I learned a little something. And these were just simple fifth grade, sixth grade level concepts that I did not know. And I was like, okay, well, I can stand behind, what this is, what we're doing, what we're talking about. And so I initially got in to just learn. I was like, I'll get my license, I'll learn, educate myself, maybe help our family. And then if I help some other people, great. Obviously as a nurse, I like helping people. So that was on my radar. Perfect. Like, all we do is educate and help families. I can totally do that. But it wasn't really until I got deep into learning that I was like, oh my goodness, so many people need this. So many people do not know simple concepts. They don't understand their accounts. They don't understand how interest works. They don't understand how money grows. They don't understand how they're being taxed. So I fell in love with it. And I stood behind it saying, you know what? I'm going to leave this industry and do this full time, not only to control my time, not only to be able to have that freedom, which is what I ultimately wanted. I wanted to be able to have my life back, my time back. But I felt like I was doing good, and I could stand 100% behind that, because that's the whole reason why I got into nursing. So that transition, it took me 3 years. It did take me some time. I worked full time while learning the industry, getting my feet wet. And now I'm transitioning out of nursing. Right now, I do actually still work per diem. I work once a week. But the ultimate goal is I'm going to be 40 in January, and I want to say that I'm going to be retired at the age of 40 and get to do this full time. So that is my ultimate goal, that I'm going to be completely retired and I'm going to be just helping families, moving from healthcare to wealth care is what I like to say.
I love it. I love it. And I love that you talked about being retired at 40. I tell people all the time in all different atmospheres. I actually told somebody today at a lunch and learn I was at that I retired myself 3.5 years ago from corporate America. And they're like, but you still work, you have a business. And I'm like, working for yourself is a whole different ball game than working for somebody else. So yes, I retired myself. So I love that. Cyndi, I want to circle back. You talked a little bit when you became unenamored with what you were doing, and it kind of opened your eyes to some things. But then how did that transition to were you already in financial services at the time? And then how did that transition into, I want out of this, and financial services can be the answer to that?
So I entered a little bit different than Jenna. I was actually working 3 jobs at one time. I worked like 70 plus hours a week. I had 2 kids still in college. We have a total of 5 kids. And I was working at ER, critical care transport, and then I also did interventional radiology. And I got introduced to the company through a friend of mine at work. And she said, would you just help my husband out? I'm like, sure, that's what we do. We're nurses, right? We help people out. And so I went on an appointment. I will tell you, I was super negative and I didn't really want to hear anything they had to say. And although my husband is an entrepreneur himself, he has his own business. He didn't have life insurance. And I'm like, well, maybe they could give us life insurance quotes. Like, that's what we'll be open to. And we went on, we did a financial review, what we call, and I was surprised at several things. One, I lied on all my things I owed on because we were in debt. I did not tell the truth because I made a bunch of money. A lot of money was going out. I was not a
Yeah.
saver. I had a bunch of kids that just sucked the life out of me. And that's what I worked for, literally. And I was never unhappy. I thought that was the place I was supposed to be. Like I'm supposed to help get them through school, get them through college,
Yeah.
and they could be on their way, right? And so I opened the door and I had my first appointment in October, November. They did a review and then they shocked me in that I thought, well, we'll be really good. Like I have my social security, I have my 401k, and I have a small pension that I'll have. And they're like, well, did you realize that would be taxed? All of it. I didn't know all of it would be taxed. I thought only a portion. And I didn't realize or didn't calculate the amount. And I'm like, well, that doesn't sound as good. So they just sort of opened my eyes, right? And I was like, oh, wow. And then they showed me other ways to save your money tax exempt. And I'm like, that's intriguing. And I
Mm.
still was like, they're like, well, you should do this. You'd be really good at it. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. I have 3 jobs. I still have 2 kids at home, like there's no way. I mean, you guys, so it took them about 5 months to actually get me to be like, okay, I think I'll do it. And the way they did it was at this point, I didn't realize I was unenamored with nursing. They
Mm.
said, well, this is how much we made on what we had provided for you. They didn't charge me money. They just made it on the back end. I was like, whoa, I am in the wrong industry. I kind of recognized that. And then I still thought in my mind, I'm like, I'm just going to still do nursing because that's where I thought I was at. And I'm just going to refer people. I'm just going to keep referring people and then I must make money. And then it'll be the best of both worlds, right? And so then COVID hit. And pretty soon after COVID hit, I just realized that I put it all together because the event with our son happened the year before I got introduced. There was some products I was really passionate about that we offer. And I was like, wow, I just don't want to do this anymore. And so I quit my nursing job at that point. I was about 3 years in, same as Jenna. Um, and I just was like, talked to my husband. I'm like, can we do it? And he's like, I feel like you want the life that I have because he's an entrepreneur. He controls
Mhm.
his time. And I'm like, yeah. And so we did it. And I haven't really looked back. I do enjoy nursing. So occasionally I've done some infusions for some families, but I don't really do that anymore. I just predominantly do this. And I love it. I mean, so my entry was a little bit different. I didn't realize when I first came in that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I thought I still wanted to be an employee and just bring money along the side. But that
Yeah.
that changed pretty quickly.
Yeah. And I understand that thought process. I was the same way, but I would tell people, I want to get my time back. I want to take care of my parents someday. But I don't think I had pursued that as deep as it really got about 18 months into my business. And I had a mentor. I earned a mentorship call with one of the big leaders in the company I was in at the time. And we had this amazing call and this amazing conversation. And I'm like he gets where I'm coming from. And then all of a sudden he's like, so when are you going full time? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm a single mom. Like I got a house payment to pay. There's no other income in here. And he's like, you're a single mom with a son who's in the Marine Corps earning his own money now, right? And that was it for me. That was the snap of like, holy crap. I don't have all the same now. Yeah, I still have a house payment to pay, but I'm not in the position where I have to guarantee there's an income so that there's a roof over our head and food on our table. Like, I'm finally in the position in life where if I want to take the chance to bet on myself and do something different, like this is that time. And then he says, you talk about wanting to get your time back and wanting to be able to take care of your parents someday. Like, when are you actually going to put some action behind that? And so literally by the end of that weekend, I had a 6-month plan put together. And I actually retired 7 months later because I was nice enough to stay for 45 days at my employer because they were so supportive in my leaving that I stayed till they could replace me. But anyway, it is a different process and a different transition for everybody, I think. And so you guys kind of touched a little bit already, I think, on why financial services, just what you saw in it for yourselves for sure. But I want to ask the question, like, how do you feel like the skills and expertise that you each had in nursing translate to working with your clients in financial services? Let's start. I guess I didn't clarify this time. Let's start with Cyndi this time.
We're like, who's going? Yeah. So for me, it really was, our son was diagnosed with a brain tumor the year before, and we went through that whole year. It was a journey. And that's a story for another time, but we got told about a product that has a living benefit. That means you can accelerate your death benefit if you're chronic, critically, or terminally ill. And so for our son, we didn't have that. I didn't even know about it. And so I was like, man, how come people aren't telling people about this? There is just a lack of education. And if you translate nursing to financial services, nursing's all about education. That's what we do. We teach our patients, we teach the families, we teach the doctors, we teach everybody how to care the best for you. So for me, it was an easy transfer because now I'm just teaching people, how do you care for you and make sure your money's okay? Because here's the thing. The number one cause of bankruptcy is a medical catastrophe or a medical diagnosis or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter if it's major or relatively minor. If you get a chronic illness that starts out slow and then you end up needing infusions and all kinds of stuff and then you can't work, now it's the same really as a terminal illness on the cost. And people don't factor in that you might need to have somebody come into your house. Some of the infusions that I gave were thousands and thousands of dollars that insurance doesn't cover all of it. So if you don't have a big chunk of money, which most of the United States doesn't have, then who's paying for all that? Maybe you don't get the care. Maybe you don't get the extra infusions, and maybe you don't lengthen your life. I don't know. But I thought for us, as soon as I was introduced, even though I decided at that time, well, I'm not going to do this, for me, it was like, man, everybody needs to know about this. And so then the more I got into it, the more I realized I'm just teaching people about their finances the same as I'm teaching people about their health. And to me, what better thing to do is to blend the two and to have people covered in case something in their health happens. Because 85% of the country is going to get a chronic or critical illness in their lifetime. That's a pretty big percentage. So for me, it was an easy transfer of knowledge. Yes, I had to learn things about finances because I didn't know them all, but the skills that I have and that I utilize in this industry are directly related to what I learned as a nurse or what made me good as a nurse. I care about people and I love to teach people. If I can show them something new, a skill, a trick, something that nobody knows, then I feel like that's kind of like what I like to do.
Yeah. How about you, Jenna?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Cyndi. It is, I'm going to kind of piggyback on that because it was though we're learning something different, it was easy because of the fact that that's all we do as a nurse is we educate, educate, educate. Even in financial services, we still educate. It's not necessarily like we don't make the decision for them. Sometimes we help to guide them, but we're giving them an informed decision now about their finances. Whereas in healthcare, we're giving them informed decisions. If I'm going to go, help somebody with their nutrition, it's still their choice whether or not they go and actually help themselves and do the things that I'm recommending. Same thing in the financial services. I can look at somebody's financial needs analysis and say, this is where you're lacking, or this is where, we need to make some small adjustments, but it's still their decision ultimately. So it's really, that transition, pretty simple for me. But even some of the things as a nurse, we're compassionate, we're caring, we have great time management skills. I think a lot of us are workaholics. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would say that one of the things that like people always say is I have no excuses, and I just don't. Like, people always ask me, how do you do all the things that you do? I just do it. And that's not sometimes the best answer that people want to know, but like, realistically, nurses, they just do it. Like, if something happens and, I don't know an answer to something, I figure it out. I go get my resources. I figure out what needs to be done, or how to answer something so that, the patient's, best taken care of. Well, same thing here, so that the client's best taken care of. The beauty of what we do being independent agents is that we have a multitude of different solutions, different markets that we can reach. We're not just helping people with their finances or insurance. We're also helping people maybe with their trusts or wills, or, we can leverage people where, we have a CPA firm that we help, our clientele with, to help reduce tax liability. And so we're not just, a one trick pony. We have a lot of different options. And, the best thing about being a nurse is that a lot of what we do, it correlates with your health and how healthy you are. And so, Cyndi and I, for example, like, we could sit down with a client and gather so much more information, because for us in nursing, we are taught to ask questions. We are taught to make assessments. And a lot of times when people come into this industry brand new, they don't maybe ask enough questions, or they're like, oh, we got the perfect solution for you. But now we're going back to, we're on this medication, your BMI is high. And whereas, for Cyndi and I, it's very easy, or anybody in the medical field, we have a huge team of nurses or people that are in the medical field, because we ask those questions so that we can go get the solutions for that particular client on the first try, instead of taking 5 or 6 tries, which, can only prolong, being covered or having, your assets protected. So that's huge. It's a huge skill. And I would say a big benefit for anybody in the healthcare field that's going to transfer over, because we have that knowledge and it just immediately transfers over into this industry.
Yeah. No, I think all of that information is really good, but I think one of the really good points right there is you guys have been trained and exercised the ability that you were trained with to ask questions, but not just ask questions. Like, you guys have to have some difficult conversations, I imagine, throughout your nursing careers, right? Like, you've experienced some really difficult conversations. And also, I've got to imagine you've got that patient who, like Cyndi Hall, that had debt when she sat down for her financial analysis in the beginning, didn't want to admit what she knew was like, she could see, oh, I don't really want them to know this whole story yet. And so they try to cover things up. Okay, well, in your finances, that's not the greatest thing, because it slows us down in being able to help somebody. But when it comes to someone's health, it could kill them if they don't give you the right information, right? So the impact of that, of having those hard conversations, like, what a great strength to innately be comfortable asking questions, but asking the hard questions and I imagine you guys have an ability to kind of see through those people who aren't wanting to completely open up and tell you everything, which gives you the ability to give them more information to maybe kind of bridge that gap and get them more comfortable, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, even providing like that empathy or that sympathy, or even relating. I think that as a nurse, we tend to do a lot of relating to somebody. So if somebody's going through something, like, hey, listen, I was here too. Like, or hey, listen, everybody's here right now. I mean, everybody right now, everybody's experiencing the inflation. People are losing jobs left and right. Like, we're all going through this together. And, a lot of times when I tell my clients, like, listen, be as honest as you can be. It's only going to help me to better protect you. So be as honest as you can be. And I mean, it's one of the things that, obviously, I think especially for Cyndi as an ER nurse, you see a lot. You see a lot of people and they see them lying through their teeth, but then you can kind of redirect or re-ask questions in a different way to have them open, open them up a little bit. Sometimes with people a couple times. And that's okay. That's what, that's what we do. Sometimes it's not just a one time that we're meeting with someone to collect all of the data. We have to pull out the truths. But I always tell people too, hey, some of these truths are going to come out, especially when it comes to life insurance, because that is solely based on your health.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
And then making them feel comfortable too, because like people have things that happen in their life, and then you can literally find other solutions as well. We try to find the best solutions, but making them feel comfortable. Obviously, the people I sat down with initially didn't really make me feel as comfortable because I wasn't willing to open up to them, And so I think that's one thing that a nurse or people that learn to do this can, we come in with it with that already. You have to get people to, especially in the ER, in a short period of time, give you the answers that you need to make a judgment. And so translating that to here is that, we are taught to ask more questions and more pointed questions.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good thing to point out. And definitely a strength that you guys have that can serve you really well in the financial services industry for sure. So let me ask you this. Has your perspective on service changed at all since getting into the financial sector? Or do you feel like it's kind of the same? You're just, the way you're serving people is different, but your perspective on service hasn't changed, or has it?
Clarify, do you mean service to like just being of service, or the financial services industry? Has it changed? Has that perspective changed?
No, your perspective on service, on taking care of clients or patients. Does that pretty much ring true, or are there things you've noticed or things that maybe are less or more than in the financial services side than in the medical care side?
Well, I think for me, I think what I didn't know at a young age was that my calling is to serve. So I don't think that part of it has changed. What I think has changed, because I've grown tremendously, especially over the last year, is that I'm learning how to not just give or handhold. And like as you build an organization, you have to teach people how to be resourceful. Like Jenna had said, we're resourceful. We had to be. Like, she is a manager of a surgery center, which means she was responsible for all that stuff, right? I was in the ER, charge nurse of an ER. There's days we had no electricity, we had no this, we had no phones. He had to figure it out. So when you're dealing with people that you're working with, then you need to teach them those abilities. And sometimes, well, at least for me, it was easier to hold their hand than to get them to figure it out, like give them the clues to figure it out themselves. But you'll make them more self-sufficient if you don't hold their hand. So that for me has changed a lot. But as far as serving my clients, I feel like I always want to do the best. And sometimes I might feel like I'm bugging them. But the reality is, if I'm bugging you, then I believe there's a reason why you should be doing what it is. And until you tell me, no, I don't want it, I will continue to bug you, because when you're dealing with money or products, they are time sensitive.
Yeah.
And the other thing I know is that your health is time sensitive. So some of the products we deal with, if you get a diagnosis in the time that we're thinking about it, you may not qualify anymore. So my persistency is related to the fact that I care. And sometimes I care more than they realize. And so I don't think that part has changed. I think for me, that's inbred in who I am. And I need to actually embrace that. I just realized this on this call that might just be my calling. And never really wanted to like admit it, maybe. I don't know. But if I think about it, that's the thing that I love the most, is being of service.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think you made a really important point there, because there are times that we feel like, man, I got to call them again. I got to call them again. I got to text them. I follow up, whatever. But a really good point that you just made there is it's because we care. And every single one of us could tell the stories of either one of our own clients or the client of one of our business partners that we know passed on a product, passed on getting a product that would have protected their family if something happened to them, and then something happened to them and their family was left without. Or somebody going through an injury or an illness and they didn't get those benefits. And we've seen the GoFundMe accounts and things like that pop up. And so I think it's a really important thing that you just touched on there, that if we keep calling you, it's because we care. You should be more concerned if somebody talks to you about your finances and quits calling than you should be.
Amen.
Continue to call, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Because that tells you what they're in it for. And I know for each of us, it's because we care about people and we want people to be able to change their lives. And that can be done one step at a time if they're willing to climb the ladder with us or cross the bridge with us, whatever you want to refer to it at.
Yeah.
So Jenna, I want to switch the question. Coming back to you, what financial advice do you think would benefit people working in high stress jobs like nursing?
What financial advice? Sit down with someone that knows this industry at a younger age. No.
Yeah.
One of the things, I mean, I'm not old. I'm 39. I got introduced to this when I was 36. And like I said in the beginning, I was a very good saver. I had a 401k. But I was never really educated on my 401k. I knew I put money into, my account. But that's about it. And so I didn't really know. I knew I had life insurance through work. That's all I really knew. And that's all I was really ever taught. It's all my parents taught me. It's all they had. And so I wish I knew what I know now at a very young age. And when it comes to like a high stress job or, anything, I mean, the biggest thing in the healthcare field is that obviously we can be exposed to a lot of things. So we always think that we're untouchable, that we're okay. And, I have many people that have, they have their life insurance policy and they said, I'm good. And then, a year later got diagnosed with breast cancer, or a year later, I had a nurse that got diagnosed with colon cancer. And we have solutions that have, I know Cyndi touched on it, living benefits. So if something like that happened, a chronic, a critical, or terminal illness, even cancer qualifies, you don't have to touch your savings. You don't have to drain all your accounts. You can pull out of your life insurance policy while you're living and utilize that to pay for whatever, to pay for food, to pay for the bills of the groceries, to pay for your mortgage, so that, say if it was my spouse going through cancer, I could stay home and take care of him, take care of our kids, and not have to worry about an income coming in. That is huge. I never knew anything about living benefits. And to be quite honest, there are many firms that don't know, or many companies that don't know about living benefits. And they have come over and transferred over to our firm because they didn't know any of that either. And they've been in the industry as well. So really the knowledge is one thing, but applying the knowledge and really knowing all different companies, all of the different solutions that we have at our fingertips, is huge. I mean, I promote living benefits with everything that I do, especially people that are in the healthcare field, are in a high, stress job, firefighters, linemen, people that are, up 30 feet in the air. I know one of our agents who told us a story that her husband fell 15 feet from a ladder. Thankfully, she had one of these policies and was able to utilize it. I have a friend that I sat down with, and I was like, her fiance at the time only had work insurance. It was just like the minimum of a salary. And I felt something in my heart, whether it was God, I don't know. I am religious. I don't know what it was, but I kept bugging her or following up with her. We got to get your fiance on. He needs to see this. He needs to see this. And unfortunately, 6 months later, he passed away. And he never got covered. She was left with 2 kids with $60,000. And we just don't know. We have no idea what hand we're going to be dealt. We have no idea what's going to happen in our life. And to learn this knowledge as soon as you can and apply it is only going to allow you peace of mind and have that protection that you're okay, that you are really okay. And so what I would tell people that are listening, if you have something from work, I would encourage you to dig a little deeper. I'd encourage you to sit down with someone, whether it's one of us, to explain more of these products and explain more of these type of accounts. Because sometimes it's not even, changing or coming up with more additional money or anything like that. Sometimes it's just tweaking what you have. Going into upgrade what you have so that you have these other benefits. But I'd rather know my options than not know. And that was something that I just didn't know. I just didn't know that this was out there. So I'm so grateful and thankful that I at least had the opportunity that Jason took to sit down with my husband and myself to show us. I just took it a step further and decided to, become licensed and wanting to teach other people myself because of my compassion that I have to serve other people and to have that servant heart as well.
Yeah. How about you, Cyndi? Any advice, for people with those high stress jobs?
So we could have a whole podcast on this. I
We
feel like
could.
especially nurses, but it could be any other high stress job, is that what you need to do is be financially stable, because then you don't need your job. You're doing your job because you want to do your job. If you're doing your job because you need it, I was a single mom for a while and I had to go to work. Jenna talked about she didn't get paid during COVID because they didn't have work because they couldn't open. They weren't like the hospital. So if you're not financially stable and you don't have those things figured out, then your job becomes a nightmare because you have to do it. So my goal is to educate all the nurses and so they can become financially independent. So then in turn, we can start dictating to the hospitals and healthcare how we can be treated. But when you need your job, you can't dictate anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like to say all the time, money doesn't give you happiness, but money gives you the ability to do the things that can create happiness. And whether that's making a career change, whether that's putting yourself in a position where you just have a little more time freedom, or you're able to get yourself out of debt because you start, something on the side that allows you to bring in some additional income and get control of your budget a little bit more. I think especially for people in high stress jobs, that's really important. It gives you options. Whatever those options are for you, it's going to be different for you, meaning the listeners out there. It depends on, what your world looks like. But just to have those options can make all the difference in the world for sure. So I know you guys have both touched a little bit on long-term care, and I think that's super important. For those listening, if you haven't listened to episode 19, you can go back there. I have one of my good friends, Anne-Marie Entner, on episode 19, talking about the kind of options that having proper coverage and having long-term care and living benefits can give you. She personally has rheumatoid arthritis. So she's been on a health battle of her own the last few years, but during that has been a hands-on in-home caretaker for her mom for some time until she passed. And then now from a distance with her mother-in-law, she's actually in a facility for the level of care that she needs, but still overseeing and caring for a lot of things to support that whole process. So it's a really good episode to dive in, to a whole story of somebody that's faced that on multiple different levels. In episode 19. And we'll have to have you guys come back in the future and talk a little bit more about that from your perspective in nursing, some of what you see people go through when they're facing those diagnoses, that maybe can translate a little bit different for the listeners than what we typically see, right? Like you guys, fortunately or unfortunately, maybe a little bit of both. You've gotten to see, you lived behind the curtain, right? Not just got to peek behind it here and there, but actually lived behind there. And I think that even though those might be difficult conversations or really direct conversations, I think they're important if it makes somebody open their eyes to the opportunity to protect themselves in that kind of situation. So, but as we round this out, I want to ask you guys each to touch on real quick, what do you, and I know you're both doing a little bit here and there with pieces you still like to do, but when you look at your career as a whole in full-time nursing, is there something that you miss? And how do you find fulfillment in what you're doing now? When you miss pieces of that, how do you find that where you're at now? And then what advice would you give to other healthcare professionals considering making a change and maybe why they should look into financial services? So let's start
So
with, you want to go? Go, Jenna. You go first.
So for me, sometimes, I get patients a lot that'll say, "Oh my gosh, like thank you for being so nice." I'm like, I'm just really sorry that you had a really bad experience with some nurses, but there are some nurse ratchets out there, let me tell you. But like, for me, like I'll get hugged, some people try to kiss me, and I'm like, oh, but that overwhelming, a lot of times as a nurse, you don't get that thank you. We don't really get that all the time. Like a lot of times people think like we do, but we really don't. We get it every once in a while. And so anytime somebody genuinely gives me a hug or, just thanks me for my service, I'm like, it's almost like I'm kind of like, it's like awkward. Like, you're welcome. Like, it's my job. Like, it's what I do. But it does still make me feel warm inside because my love language is service as well. And, it does make me feel warm and cuddly and, oh, okay. Like they appreciate me. But I would translate that into the financial industry because we do deal with such a sensitive subject. Finances are such a sensitive subject. For some people, either they don't want to share or they're embarrassed, or some people like maybe they are doing very well and they don't want to share if they're doing very well because they don't want anybody to know. I mean, there's all different aspects in that realm. And we are really asking people to open up. We're asking people to be vulnerable. And so when we truly do help somebody, especially if somebody's like getting out of debt, that is, when they come back and they think, I just literally had somebody 4 months ago that came back to me and said, I'm almost done. My last payment is next month. Thank you so much for introducing me to the company that helped me get out of debt. Now I can finally, save for my daughter. She's a single mom of 3. I can finally put my life back together. That is so rewarding to me. And I will say, I personally have not had to do this, but I know other agents have, but to deliver that death certificate, that money to the family, not the certificate, but the money to the family, the check to the family, and how that is changing their life, though it's a very sad situation. That money does help. It does help in being able to say, here you go. Let's take care of things you need to take care of and to be there for that family. I haven't personally had to do it, but the stories that I've heard is outstanding. And for advice for people coming into this, maybe looking at this industry, like everything that we've obviously discussed, we do a lot of the same thing, just in a different light. When we talked about, dealing with somebody's health, we're still kind of dealing with that. We're dealing a lot with that health, but dealing with their finances, we're still dealing with it in a very tender way that is people, I think, in the healthcare field can relate to because, when we're dealing with somebody in their most worst time being in the hospital or going through cancer or going through it, maybe a horrific car accident, we're there for that family and we're helping them along their journey in the realm that we can help them with as they're there with us. And in this aspect and being in the financial industry, we're helping them, get out of debt. We're helping them save for their future, maybe, build a legacy, for their family that they never thought they would be able to maybe achieve, or maybe, maybe a simple task of I'm worried about outliving my money. And now we gave them that peace of mind. Like, hey, listen, you're never going to have to worry about that ever again. Yeah. It's just very empowering and very, I guess rewarding is a big thing. And so making that transition, whether you're just going to learn a little more about it, or even, you're like, hey, like this sounds very interesting. I think that I'm just tired of nursing too. It's something that it goes along the same lines, and it was a very easy transition because of, our compassion for our patients and our compassion for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Cyndi? Anything you want to add to that?
Well, I probably agree with a lot of it, although coming from the ER, what I miss, but I don't know that I could handle it anymore at my age. I think I could rock with the best of them, but I don't really want to. Is that adrenaline? There's a lot of adrenaline in the ER. Like somebody comes in, you got to do your thing. There's probably a little bit of that I miss. Um, but I always said I didn't want to be there when people are like, "Oh, why is she still working this job?" So I feel like I got out before that. But there is a part of that I miss. There is some adrenaline with doing some like exciting deals, like you're really helping somebody out and you're making an impact. That's actually fun. But as far as like advice, what I would give to somebody, not just a nurse, but anybody that would want to trans into entrepreneurship, and I learned this through the business, which is interesting, is that get your finances in order, know your bottom dollar. Like, what does it take? And that's what we did. My husband and I got together. We figured out our bottom dollar. What do we need to bring in? And then that's what we just, when we decided, yeah, it's okay, you can go. I consistently did that amount over many years. I just don't know why I thought I couldn't leave. But if you figure out what is your bare minimum that you need, then you could go venture out and do anything, because then you can figure out, well, I can make this here or make that there, or cut down to part-time or per diem or, whatever you want to choose. But the thing about entrepreneurship, like everybody's like, oh, I need a guaranteed income. Well, a job is not really guaranteed. They could let you go tomorrow if they felt like it. In COVID, a lot of my coworkers, they like from other facilities, they were laid off right and left because all the elective stuff stopped, And so
Right.
I don't think anything in life is guaranteed except for death and taxes. And so if
And we
you
can
feel
help
like
with both of those.
exactly, right? We can.
We can protect you if
In
one
more ways
happens, and
than
we
one.
can
I'm just
reduce
kidding.
the other one. So yeah.
Yeah, right? So I would say like just don't think of it as like I need a guarantee. Open up your mind and think like, how am I going to control my time? How am
Mhm.
I going to be the captain of my ship, like the person that's actually leading it? Because unfortunately, if you're an employee, they control you. They control your money and they control your time. And that's just about everything. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's what advice I would give to anybody that wants to be an entrepreneur because we're not taught those things in school. Like
Mhm.
that was hard. I mean, I know Jenna didn't talk about it, but I know we both have this in common is that leaving that job is hard. It's a crutch. And you think that
Mhm.
there's such guarantees, but you could have one person complain about you one day and you could go down a rabbit hole that you don't even belong in. And all of a sudden you're facing like, oh, am I going to get let go or what's going to happen here? You just never know. I mean, so there's really no guarantees, you know? So just go
Yeah.
out and make money.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. That's a really good point. And I'm glad you referenced anybody that's looking to be an entrepreneur or that's curious about the financial services industry. I tell people all the time, it's not for everyone.
Mm-mm.
But it is for the people that it's for. And so if there's anything, in listening to this episode, listening to the show in general, that's piqued your interest, I mean, you can go to the link that'll be posted with this episode and send a note in. I mean, in 5 minutes, I can get, Jenna or Cyndi or both of them on a call to answer any questions, especially if you are in the medical profession. They can understand what you're dealing with and probably answer a lot of questions. In a little more detail in a conversation one-on-one. So, please reach out. I'm happy to, you know, set up that time where you can have those conversations with Cyndi and Jenna, with myself. Just in general, if you have questions, I'm a believer, ask them. At least then you have an answer and you have a direction to go. But, why end up 5 years down the road, even more beaten down than you might already
Mhm.
feel? And think, man, I wish I, shoulda, woulda, coulda. You can't go back and change it. And so, take the chance, have the conversation, because you never know what might come from it. So you guys, I'm so grateful. I look at both of you and I feel like you both came from a very noble profession, a place where you sacrificed yourself, your time, your families, to serve other people. And in a sense, you've stepped into another very noble profession. And you do a lot of that same stuff, just a different way. I came from a place where, I mean, my job was important, but I didn't save lives every day in the previous 20 years of my career. But I know that I do every single day now. And there's nothing like being able to wake up every day and think, who do I get to make a difference for today? Whose life do I get to save today? Jenna touched on, delivering those checks. I've never had to do that myself either. And nothing, no matter how big the check is, it's not going to replace the loved one they lost, but it may just give them the freedom to grieve properly and to grow closer to the people who are going to help them through a really difficult time. And so for us to have the ability, or to know that someday that time will come for us, but we're going to be able to take some of the pressure off in a really dark time in somebody's life or a family's life, I think makes the difference for all three of us. So I just want to give you guys one last chance. If there's anything else you want to share, if you want to give, now Cyndi does have a podcast. So Cyndi, please, I'll have you go first, but please share about, real quick, your podcast, where people can find it. And if you want to give your Instagram, so if there's, nurses or just people out there that want to follow along to your stories, they know where to find you guys.
Yeah. So my Instagram is at yourretirementnurse.com. And my daughter and I, who's also a nurse, have a podcast called Nice Girls Wear Scrubs. And we go over all the nitty gritty of nursing. We have some interesting topics. We're pretty raw and real. So we're about every other week, and we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Don't watch the YouTubes. Always look kind of crazy, but whatever. Anyways, but that's where you can find us. We'd love to have feedback of what you'd like to hear about. Our ultimate goal is to affect change and policy for nurses so that we can make it a better profession. But that's my last bit of advice is, if you're not where you love or you want to be, or if you want to see some changes, then get involved or change where you're at. I mean, I changed my profession at 55, and most people at 55 are getting ready to ride off into the sunset, but you can do anything at any age. The age is not a factor, and you can change your life. All you got to do is make a decision.
Awesome. Thank you. Jenna, how about you?
Yeah, I wanted to add in there as well that Cyndi and I actually do a medical webinar, typically once a month, sometimes twice a month, but we'll just say once a month, that we do post via social media. So, again, my social media for Instagram is at Jenna Reid, and it's REID 121. Feel free to follow. We try to post things that are, valuable. We try to bring value. But just like Cyndi said, if you're just I'm feeling stuck, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling overworked or undervalued, or you're just you know what, I need a change in my life. And, this may or may not be for you, but you can always come check it out. We have an amazing team culture dynamic. We are all about family first, faith and family first. And, check us out and see if it may or may not be something for you. It may be somebody that you're thinking of, maybe somebody that that maybe lost a job, or, single mom and needs a little extra income, have them check it out. But we love to bring on medical professionals. Of course, we love all types of professionals. We have single moms on our team as well. But we are only, Natalie, Cyndi, myself, we are only one person. We can only reach so many people. And so we're always looking for good, just high integrity, good moral people that want to do good by other people, to come into this industry and learn the skills to be able to help others.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you guys both again for being here today. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and please, we work together to help change people's lives. So any one of us would be happy to have a conversation with you. I'll make sure that Cyndi and Jenna's Instagram links and Cyndi's podcast link are in the show notes. And yes, they do that medical webinar every month. And I've been on it a couple times. It's great. They go a little bit deeper into some of the information, some of the background behind some of the things. So I do think that's really important. And of course, thank you listeners for listening every single week to the Nickels and Dimes podcast. It's important to me, like Jenna said, each of us is only one person and we can't reach everyone. And that's why I started this podcast, not so that I can be the solution for everybody, but so I can help people to open the window or open the door to the conversation to change their lives from a financial perspective. So I'm your host, Natalie Kime, and I look forward to continuing to bring you amazing content each week that will educate you, support you, and most importantly, help you to find financial freedom. I look forward to having you listen again next week. And until then, take care and stay safe.